let's talk about expressiveness because I think one common grouse amongst my students, right, is that they keep thinking, why is it that other people are so confident on stage, but I'm like so awkward and I don't dare to sing, like this kind of stuff, right? Is it visible on the birth chart? And how would you encourage people to, to transform themselves from the
Well, I
astrology
think
point of view,
that
lah?
there is
Yeah.
birth chart and there's also sometimes confidence. And I get asked a lot about confidence in general, and not just for singing, it's confidence for all sorts of things, right?
Okay.
Confidence comes when there's success.
Mm, mm,
If
mm.
you think about how nobody ever asks, am I confident enough to brush teeth on my own? You would never ask anything like that because you successfully brush your teeth every day. But anybody who's ever had a toddler, and I know Bevlyn has, it's
Yeah.
like there is a point in your life where the toddler is not entirely sure that if mommy is not around, I can brush my teeth on my own. You know why? Because your kid has never successfully brushed his teeth on his own before.
Mm, mm,
But once
mm.
they've done it like 10 times, they're actually kind of annoyed that you're there. Like, mommy,
Yeah.
leave the
I mean,
leave the
go away.
bathroom. Like,
Go
I can do
away.
this, like, go away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, the simple answer to confidence, which is nothing to do with astrology, is that
Yeah.
you are confident of doing things that you have done successfully before. You've done
Mm,
it 10 times successfully yourself before. You're annoyed that somebody's trying to help you, right?
mm,
So
mm.
it's like, and it applies to everything. So for example, I don't cook, right? And on the very, very rare, like once a century occasion where May decides to cook something, I can tell you I'm scared, like from top to bottom. I'm so convinced I'm going to mess it up. But then there are people among your students and your listeners who cook every day. And then they will look at me and go like, this silly girl, it's like, how difficult can it be? But I'm freaked out, I'm sure I'm going to burn the house down, So basically, you see, confidence usually comes from success,
Mm,
which means if you never try, you will never be confident. So basically, if you think that if you sit around facing your four walls, that one day you're going to get confident,
mm,
or that
mm.
some magic transit or some magic people who like astrology, right? They ask me, oh, can you see from my chart, like when will I be confident? The answer is never if you never try. Right? You try and you're successful 10 times, you will be confident. Right? So
Right,
it's
right.
like, so if I look confident in front of the camera, it's because I'm in front of the freaking camera every day.
Mm,
Every day I'm in front of the camera. So it's like, of course I'm comfortable, right? So
yeah.
and that's I think people just need to put themselves out there. Okay.
I
And
think I get what you're trying to say because it's easy to be fatalistic to look at the birth chart and say, well, because your son is in the eighth house, so I think it's quite hard for you to make it, that kind of stuff, right?
yeah.
But that's not what you want to tell people. You want to say, actually, if you find it difficult, yes, we all have innate, like weaknesses, but actually you just have to put in more effort to expose
Yes.
yourself to it. And
Yes.
that's
But
what I'm trying to
I
say.
also want to be fair. I also want to be fair in the sense that the chart does suggest that there are people who are more comfortable with being on camera and on stage and in a recording studio. And a lot of it has to do with a particular thing in the chart known as the sun. Okay,
Mm,
so the sun, some of the key themes associated with it is expression. And if you
mm,
think of even the sun in the sky, right? It is like this thing that has this warmth and energy that radiates out from a core point. And this is relevant to performing because that's essentially what a performer is. And that's
mm,
why we associate performers with being stars, because the sun actually is a star, right? So it radiates its own light. So is there such a thing as a sun being strong in a person's chart? In the sense that it resonates more strongly with them. So for
mm,
some people, what resonates with them is being a supportive role. So they prefer to be backstage and helping out with things. And then there are people who are more confident being on stage, being the star. So they don't
mm,
want to play a supporting role. For
mm,
example, look at someone like Barack Obama. Can you imagine Barack Obama being number two? Or is
mm.
Obama always going to want to be the star? And
Yeah.
he strolls onto the stage and you just know that, he's a star, right? So are
Mm.
there people like that? I have to say yes. Having said that, there's also a downside. I'm sure you've heard that a lot of performers who are very successful, they are divas. Oh my God. They are absolute ego bastards, right? You know what I mean? So they'll
I know.
ask for things in their dressing room. Then it's like, why is it this color I don't
Always
like?
can't wait, the kind of
Yes.
attitude.
But everybody will wait for them. It's like, all the recording studio, they're like, okay, everybody is there, they're ready to go, but the star's not here. Then it's
Yeah.
like wait for her to like do her makeup or whatever, right? She'll take her own sweet time, go eat pizza or something. But my point here is that, so basically for everything in the chart, there's always an upside and a downside. So
Mm,
are there people who really enjoy the attention? I'm sure even when you're at school, there's always that kid over there who just has to do things very AA or very attract attention, right? There's
yeah.
always that person. And is that person more comfortable in front of the camera? They think they're awesome. And it's like, you should all look at my face. It's like there's always that person. Okay,
Yes.
so do those people, is it true that for them the barrier to facing an audience is lower? Yes, it is. And then of course then there are the people who are more comfortable backstage. They are more comfortable plugging in things and making sure we're on the correct page and that kind of stuff. That
Mm,
for those people, is the barrier higher? Yes, it is higher.
mm,
So they are going to have a bit of a tougher time. So astrology can show who might be more comfortable.
mm,
But having said that, it still stands, isn't it, that confidence in general just comes with practice. It just
mm,
comes with having you done this thing many times in a row. And if you ask me, sometimes it's very silly things like taking the train in Singapore. There are
mm,
people who are so scared of taking the train because they've never done it. Right. So,
mm,
Bevlyn, you have a son, right? So at some point he was very scared. If you ask him to go and take MRT by himself without mommy, at some
mm,
point he does freak out. He'll pretend to be like courageous, lah, but he's actually really scared and mommy knows, right? But
mm,
the thing is, he's done it a few times. And it's like, can you honestly say that we can look into the astrology chart and see who are the type of people who are very confident taking MRT, you know? But the thing is, there's no such thing, what, right? But at some point, somebody's going to have to learn. And it's the same thing with just about everything. So
mm,
some people are just more ballsy than others, it's true.
mm,
But I don't think it's an insurmountable barrier.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What about, I mean, that the what we just discussed is like being comfortable in the limelight. But what
Mm.
about expressiveness? Because I think the other main thing that my students complain about themselves is that they sound unemotional, they sound
Mm.
robotic, or they are just so worried of like singing and then they start crying because they are so expressive. They've never been in touch with that part of their, emotions before, and it's a bit overwhelming. They can't. I mean, how do you encourage these people, or how, I mean, can you see that in birth chart, like?
Yes, yes, you can. You absolutely can. So, you are actually describing people on two extreme spectrums. So if you've
Mm,
got the robotic people who are not expressive at all, and then
yeah,
there are the people who start crying because then they are in their feeling too expressive, right?
yeah.
So let's address the robotic people first. Okay. So I think in general, the barrier comes from being embarrassed about your emotions. So
Mm,
basically, it's like, when people are singing with full expression, there are
mm,
facial expressions on your face.
yeah.
So if it's an angry song, for example, then you find that, you've seen opera singers do it. They're like this, their face is
Yeah, yeah,
very expressive. And then there
yeah.
are people who are in love and then they're very expressive in this particular way. And then, I mean, if you want to joke about them, then their face looks like, they're enjoying something else, right? But the thing is, I mean, but the purpose of singing, and in fact, the whole background and the reason for why people express themselves in song is because this is human emotion. And
Mm,
in fact, the rawer the better. Because
mm,
then it's most songs are about things like love and disappointment and hope and faith and all that stuff, right? So basically that this is a natural human emotion. But I think if somebody ends up being very robotic, sometimes it's because you're embarrassed about about showing an expression on your face that I should allow other people to see something that is so raw and so personal. So
mm,
that's why the thing that I'm looking for in the chart is a different one from the sun. This is not about expression. This is about emotional honesty, and that's why the moon is involved here. So there
mm,
are certain profiles. So when I talk about profiles, I'm talking about psychological astrology. There are actually
mm.
25 profiles, and an average
Can I
person will.
stop you here first? Because I
Yes.
think I want to acknowledge your genius.
Uh-huh.
You came out with the psychological astrology.
Yes, I did. At least this particular matrix of 25 profiles.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's amazing, because um, how do I say this? You're actually the first Singaporean to go to have a degree in astrology, but not only that, you invented this whole matrix of psychological astrology.
Yeah.
And I mean, because I've been through your lessons, I think it's really genius. It even goes to like, okay, the possibility of you having this profile is because in your childhood your mother is like that or your father is like that, and it's so accurate. And I think it also helped me to cure like some of my wounds. Because I was wondering, why am I like that? Like, okay, so for my profile is I'm not somebody who cries easily. I'm not easily touched. From young, my mother always say, "Well, your heart is like metal, made of metal," kind of feeling.
Yeah, stone cold, right?
Yeah. And then as I grow older, I need to actually learn empathy. I actually need to learn how to feel concern. I'm not evil or anything. It's just that it doesn't come naturally to me. I have to learn to be more human. And coming from that space, right? How do I put emotions into my singing? It's actually a journey in itself because when I record myself, I sounded like a robot
Yes.
back then. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also so there's a specific profile that you are referring to, which incidentally I also have. So
Yeah.
both it just happens that both Bevlyn and I have moon in the sign of Capricorn.
Mm,
So both of us we have different astrology signs, but
mm,
our moons are in Capricorn, both of us. And the nature of this, it on one level it describes the mother, but it
mm,
also describes your upbringing. And
mm.
out of curiosity, because I don't remember, Bevlyn, are you the big sister at home?
Yes.
So you're the
Yeah.
eldest daughter, right? So am I. So the thing that comes out with moon in Capricorn quite often is that these are typically the eldest child, or
Mm,
if they are not, then they will tell you things like, oh, I might as well be. Because
mm,
then sometimes you get the number two or number three person who ends up taking care of the siblings. So in a
mm.
sense, what happens with the eldest child is that you almost are, I don't use a very strong word, but it's almost like you're robbed of being that childish tantrum kid. It is your younger siblings who gets to throw a tantrum on the floor, and you're the
To
one
get
who
the
sort of drags the
attention.
kid away because
Yeah.
then the kid is disturbing your parents, right? So you end
Yeah.
up becoming sort of like a guardian of the younger siblings. Did you experience this?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm always the one who is expected to have responsibilities, to behave well, and to manage my own affairs, even though I was very young.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
it happens in small things too. Imagine you're at a shopping mall and then you see some soft toy thing that you secretly think is very cute.
Mm,
And what you really wanted to, your inner child wants to sort of run to it and hug the soft toy and ask your mother whether you can buy it. But
mm,
but the thing is, because you're the big sister, because you're not supposed to act so childish, it's
mm,
almost like you think that if you did it, your mom's gonna look at you and like, why are you behaving so childishly? Like, grow up, behave
mm,
yourself. So
mm,
if you tried it, you might have gotten that response maybe once, and then after that you were so terrified of it, then you just decided not to act like a kid anymore. So you
yeah.
became like this little adult, in the sense that so now you start to build this, like, these prison walls
Mm,
around the raw emotion. So that
mm,
means if you wanted to sort of throw a tantrum, but you can't, so then you just keep it in, right? And if you wanted to go to your mother and cry and say, okay, I failed this test, can you help me please? But you kind of don't. So then you just sort of go to your room and try to improve for the next test, and you do it all by yourself because
very
it's like,
independent. Yeah.
because you don't want to bother them.
Mm, 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 mm,
Yeah, so that happens to a lot of people. It happened to me also.
mm,
So I'm also a moon in Capricorn. So
mm,
this particular profile in my little matrix is called the caretaker. So
mm,
these people are groomed from young, maybe not deliberately by the parents, it's just by circumstances, and sometimes by our own personality also. Because technically you could still be the tantrum, childish person if you wanted to.
yeah,
But
possible.
right. And I've seen eldest kids
Yeah,
who
yeah,
are
yeah, yeah,
just as
yeah.
childish as everybody else. But it
Yes.
just happens that because of the way our birth charts are wired, right? Basically, that's how you're wired, how you're programmed. And which means that when you were given an opportunity, you embrace the opportunity to be a leader and to
Mm,
take care of people and to put other people's needs first. So that
mm,
that makes some people, like, so I guess we both ended up being teachers who look after people's welfares, right? So in that sense, that is the comfortable position, but
mm,
it doesn't gel with you being on stage and being like, oh, like, dancing like this. It doesn't feel natural to you because that's not how you were brought up, if that
mm,
makes sense to you.
mm, mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm.
so that I would suppose for many of the students who resonate with your teaching style might very well have the same profile as us.
You're
Because
so
that's the way it
right.
is, right? Because we
Yeah.
only attract people who are the similar quan as us.
Yes. It's so true because I think in my personal journey, from young, I've always wanted to be a singer. It's like my number one thing. I just kept quiet about it, but I knew I wanted to be a singer. And once I achieved the dream and I did it for a few years, I realized that, why am I so serious? I'm a very serious singer.
Yeah.
I can try to be fun, but my core is still very serious. I can't tell jokes as easily as other people. They're just silly and they can let go but not me, because of my
Yeah.
moon in Capricorn thingy.
Mm.
Then I realized that teaching gives me more satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I may, right, one of the backbones of psychological astrology, and if I may sort of toot my own horn, right, one of the reasons why my students rave so much about PA,
Mm,
psychological astrology, is how we use that logic to be able to turn it around and to release some of these the crappy things that we tell ourselves in our head, right? So let's go with this particular profile, the caretaker, especially if a lot of your students have it and they end up becoming robotic, right? And I think it's because a lot of the conversation is about me and myself. So
mm,
which means if I go on stage and I have this kind of expression on my face, right? Are people going to look at me as like, hey, that crazy woman, why she got that funny like expression on her face, like so orgasmic like that, right? So it's like you're so terrified of what people are going to say about you because if we are being honest, this is a very self-centered approach to things, right?
mm,
Because the nature of a performer is such that there is a function that you are performing at that moment, right? Either
mm,
you are the entertainment for the night, or perhaps you are conveying some kind of a message in your song, for example. So you have a job to do, but all
mm,
you're thinking about is like how people are looking at my face. Me, I. It's all about you, right? Which
yeah,
doesn't make any sense because the whole point is you're not going up there to prove a point to anybody. You're there to do your job and to
mm,
perform your function, right? So which
yeah.
is why so we turn it around. And one of the reasons why some people may be wondering, hey, I thought May also have this profile. How come May doesn't have problem doing this kind of crazy thing on camera, right? And and the answer is very simple, okay? So if you think of it as right now you have this profile and put you need to perform a function. Now I'm very clear what my function is today. Right?
Mm,
As you ask me this question, is that my role today is to show people that your raw emotion is what you're supposed to put on stage.
mm.
Because if you're singing a song about a terrible breakup, right? It is like your face cannot look like I am singing about a breakup song.
That's
I
what
mean,
I
you
say all the time. Like, it's not
right.
convincing. You look like a psycho person
Yeah. It's
singing
like then
about a sad song.
you might as well be reading up like, election results or something, right? It doesn't make sense. So which means if you're going through a breakup, your job on stage, you're there to do a job, right? Is to convey the emotions behind lost love. That's the
Mm,
whole point, right? So
mm,
you go up there and you do your job, right?
mm.
So if you are singing about lost love, then your face should look like this. You kind of need to do that. It's like,
To be
it's like,
convincing, yeah.
yeah. And also it's like, once you think of it as and what I've realized over time, for myself as a performer, that when I can break my barriers to being expressive if I need to be, right, on stage, because that's the role I'm supposed to play,
Mm,
I've realized that it releases other people to be
mm,
expressive as well. So if I can be raw with my emotion, if I'm singing breakup song, right? The idea is that if there are people in the audience who are moved to tears, for example, they are moved to tears because of the rawness of the emotion. And
mm.
they're not really moved because my voice was perfect and I'm on pitch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you can watch some of the best performers, Andrea Bocelli, for example, and
Mm,
it's like yes, technically he's one of the best singers ever lived, that one hands down. But
mm,
if you've ever heard him sing live, which I have, you
mm,
don't you don't cry and you don't make a fool of yourself on your face, crying at his voice, not because of his technique. You cry because of the emotion that he is conveying and that rawness and the beauty behind that emotion. You know, it's like I think that's what moves the audience and that's what makes him a great singer, not because his technique is good.
mm,
The technique is part of his job, his professional job. But
mm,
but what makes him go down in history is
mm.
the emotion. And he's maybe you can say he's blind, he can't see or whatever. But the point is that he is very expressive on his face. If you've watched him perform before, it is
Yes, yes,
amazing.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. What about the other spectrum of people? The
Other
people who cannot
spectrum.
hold back their tears when they sing.
Okay. So actually, it sounds like two different things, but actually
Yeah.
it's the same. Okay, so for example, they sing this song, right? Say
Yeah.
they sing breakup song, then they end up crying all over, right? The truth is, they forgot that you're supposed to be on stage doing a job. So then
Mm.
they cry because they start remembering their own breakup. They start remembering how it feels like to be abandoned by somebody that you
Or
love.
they feel so touched by the lyrics, that
Could be.
like K-drama.
It could be, but the thing is, then you see the conversation again is about you, right? It's about you
Yeah.
and what you're enjoying from that song. But hey, friend, you're supposed to be on stage doing your job, like, right? So which means that what I mean, if they cry, it's fine. There are singers who can cry, but then they can still continue doing their job. Now that's fine. I've
Mm,
seen singers do that on stage before at concerts and that kind of stuff, right?
mm, mm,
But then there are people who cry. Then after that, your voice breaks. Then you end up not doing your job already. They cannot sing already. Then that's when it's quite unprofessional. So again, it comes back to me, myself, and I. It that
mm,
and so basically, once we start to realize that where if you want to be a professional, the
mm,
what you do is not for you. It's for them. It's for the audience.
mm,
Always. Yeah, and I think that happens to because you and I, Beverly, we are in professions that are associated with hobby and
mm,
it's associated with um expression and if I'm being frank, some level of selfishness. Because it's
mm.
about hobby, right? I mean, people sing because they enjoy it. People go and do astrology because it's their hobby and they're so
Must be
happy to be
happy
in
first.
class. Yeah, it's like basically they do it to make me happy. I want to be happy.
Mm,
And that's fine if it's a hobby. Because if you like to do cross stitch because you like it, that's fine. But
mm,
if you are doing it as a profession, you cannot just stitch what you like. You have to stitch what other people want to buy, right? So
mm,
it's the
mm,
same thing. If you want to sing for a living, you kind of have to sing in a way that other people want to hear. And
mm,
and you have to produce a result for people. Otherwise, how are you going to get paid?
mm,
Right?
mm.
People don't pay you to enjoy yourself. People pay you so that they enjoy themselves. So
Yeah.
I think there's a huge difference between even for you and me because I think our students are in a spectrum of the hobbies and the persons who want to do it for a living.
Mm,
And I think the commitment level, understandably, is different. Like you play golf for fun, or if you want to be Tiger Woods, is a different story. Yeah,
mm,
so I think for the people who want to be truly good master performers,
mm.
then it needs to be very clear that the performance is not for you, it's for them. It's not for you to prove to people that you're a good singer. And I think that's why so many of your students freak out about whether are they good enough, are they blah blah blah. But when you're on stage and all you can think about is yourself, that's what makes you a bad performer. The good performer understands you have to be whatever you need to be so that the audience is enjoying themselves, not you.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
you and I mean I hope for your sake you enjoy yourself, but that's not the point,
Mm.
right?
I mean, it's true. When I was a professional singer, um, especially when I was singing in like weddings and pubs, right?
Yeah,
Especially pubs, for example, the hot song of the day is Perfect by Ed Sheeran. Then I may have to sing it twice in the night.
yeah,
Then because I'm not really that kind of fixed energy, then I'll be like,
yeah,
oh, I gotta sing it again. Didn't you listen to it just now? Like
yeah,
no feeling. Yeah, but I
yeah.
will still do it because that's
Mm,
professionalism. But it doesn't mean I'm happy to do it. It's just that I have to do it, I'll do it. Yeah. So I think to be a performer is not about fulfilling your own happiness only. There's a certain degree of like you're doing it for others,
yes,
others'
yes.
happiness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because my background is in musical theatre, right? And the nature of a musical theatre song, even if you are playing the lead role, is that a lot of these songs involve not just that one singer, it involves dancers. It
Yeah.
involves set changes, right? And you might have to sing a duet or even a song that may involve 4 or 5 singers, for example. So which
Yes.
means that the rehearsals are brutal. So
Mm,
everybody has their own style and you have to accommodate everybody's like timing and things like that. And in some cases, I never got to that level, but if I had, I might have to work with an orchestra. So then now you have something like 12, 13, 15, 25 people playing music instruments live. And it means
mm,
that the singer cannot think about yourself. It is not about your expression. It is that we have to coordinate something like 25 people just to perform one song. right?
Mm.
So it's like it's your timing of where you come in, where you stand, because then the light has to follow you on the stage. So you cannot suka suka. I feel like moving forward, then you move forward. You know, you have to remember that you can only move forward on the second verse, because then the lighting person will only move the spotlight in the second verse, because you're supposed to go forward into the audience. So there's like, you basically, you do your job within what you have to do as a performer, but it's not about us. It's about the fact that everything has to be, it's a whole package in itself.
Mm.
And maybe because my experience as a singer was less of a, like a solo singer, and that's why it maybe it's easier to see that you have a job to do, and it's not about
Just
just one
you
person's
and you
expression.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But you still have to go for training, because the thing is, the last thing you do is to show up for rehearsals and not know your songs,
Yeah.
and to sing off key, and basically you have not trained yourself properly, so that, like, basically when everybody is singing, your voice gets lost, because the
Mm.
the support is not there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So of course, on your own, you still have to make sure that you are delivering. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, can you show above chart?
And
Mm.
which is why somebody like Lady Gaga would be very happy in, like, the kind of arenas got like 50,000 people.